Emily never thought she would be the kind of woman who carried someone else's dreams on her back, but that's exactly what she did for Ryan. She believed in him so completely that she didn't even think twice when he said he wanted to go back to school. He had big plans, and he made her believe those plans were for both of them. He would look her in the eyes and say, "Once I graduate, it's you and me. We'll finally start the life we deserve." Those words were enough to push her through every tired morning and every late-night shift. She took on 2 jobs without complaining. She worked at a diner during the day and cleaned offices at night. Most weekends, she barely rested, telling herself it was worth it because she was investing in their future. She paid his tuition, rent, groceries, and even picked up extra hours when his textbooks were more expensive than expected. Emily didn't buy new clothes, didn't take vacations, and didn't let herself think about how hard things were. She kept reminding herself that once Ryan graduated, everything would get better. There were days when her feet hurt so much she cried in the shower, but she would always wipe her tears before Ryan came home. She didn't want him to feel guilty or pressured. She loved him, and in her mind, love meant helping the person you planned to spend your life with. When his mom got sick, Emily helped with the medical bills too. Ryan always thanked her at first, making her feel like they were a strong team, like they were building something real. But slowly, things started to change. Ryan began acting like he was the only one struggling, even though Emily was carrying both of them. He would complain about his classes, the workload, and how tired he was from studying, but he never noticed how exhausted she looked. Emily kept pushing herself because she believed that once he graduated, he would finally take some weight off her shoulders. She imagined a future where they would laugh about these hard days and feel proud of how far they had come. Whenever doubt crept in, she reminded herself that she wasn't doing this for nothing. She had sacrificed every bit of comfort and stability she had because she trusted him. She believed every promise he made about their future. She never imagined someone she loved so deeply would turn those sacrifices into a weapon against her. Emily thought she knew who she was building a future with. She didn't know she was actually building a future for someone who would soon pretend she wasn't even part of the story. She held on to the hope that love, effort, and loyalty meant something. She had no idea that the man she was lifting up would one day be the same man who pushed her down in front of everyone. Emily didn't realize how much she was carrying until she looked back on it later. At the time, she just kept moving because she believed she was doing the right thing. Ryan's tuition bills arrived every few months, and each time, she found a way to make it work. Sometimes that meant selling things she cared about, sometimes it meant skipping meals, and sometimes it meant borrowing small amounts just to keep the balance from going overdue. She always told herself it was temporary, that one day Ryan would be the one paying the bills while she finally rested. On top of tuition, there were all the everyday expenses that added up faster than she expected. Rent was always due, groceries were getting more expensive, and Ryan's car seemed to break down every time they were close to saving anything. Emily handled all of it quietly. She didn't complain when she had to dip into her emergency savings to fix his engine. She didn't say a word when she had to cancel her own doctor's appointment so she could afford his school supplies. She convinced herself her needs could wait because Ryan's goals were more important. When Ryan's mom needed help paying for her medication, Emily didn't think twice. She gave what she had, even though it meant she would be late on her own bills. Ryan told her he appreciated everything she was doing, and for a moment, that made all the stress feel lighter. He would put his arms around her and say, "Just hang on. Once I graduate, I'll take care of you. You won't have to worry about anything." Those words were enough to keep her going. She held on to them like a promise that would eventually become real. There were nights when Emily lay awake doing math in her head, trying to figure out if she could stretch a few dollars until the end of the week. She learned to live with quiet panic, always hoping she didn't miss anything important. It wasn't just the money that drained her. It was the constant pressure of knowing everything depended on her. She carried all the responsibility while Ryan focused on his studies, and she kept telling herself that this was what love looked like. She thought helping him succeed meant they would succeed together. What made everything harder was that Emily truly felt proud of what she was doing. She believed she was supporting the man she would marry, the man who would someday thank her with actions, not just words. She felt strong, committed, and loyal, and she thought he saw that too. She never imagined his appreciation would fade the moment he no longer needed her. In her heart, she thought she was building a future for both of them. She didn't know she was giving everything to someone who would soon act like she never gave anything at all. When Ryan graduated, Emily thought life was finally going to get easier. She imagined the pressure lifting, the late nights ending, and the two of them finally sharing responsibilities. For a short moment, she even let herself feel hopeful. But the first sign that something was wrong came sooner than she expected. Ryan got a good job faster than either of them imagined, and instead of celebrating with her, he brushed it off like it was only his achievement. Everything changed once he started working. Ryan suddenly acted like he was living in a different world. He began dressing in expensive clothes, styling his hair differently, and talking like he was above everyone else. The same man who used to thank her for every little thing now barely acknowledged her when she spoke. He would come home late without explanation, toss his jacket on the couch, and say he was exhausted. Emily tried to understand. She thought maybe he just needed time to adjust to adult life and a demanding job. Whenever she asked if he wanted dinner or if he needed anything, he responded with short, annoyed answers. He acted like her presence was an inconvenience, like she was interrupting something more important. Emily noticed he stopped asking about her day. He no longer cared if she was tired or stressed. It was as if the second he could stand on his own feet, he forgot who held him up while he couldn't. Ryan also started making comments about her appearance and her job, things he never judged before. He would say small things that cut deeply, like, maybe you should try improving yourself too, or, I can't look unprofessional, I have standards now. Emily felt herself shrinking every time he spoke like that. She didn't recognize the person he was turning into. The warmth he used to show her disappeared, as if it had never existed. She tried to make excuses for him. She told herself that starting a new career was stressful, that maybe he didn't mean to be cold. She kept thinking the man she loved was still in there somewhere, just overwhelmed. Emily tried talking to him gently, asking if everything was okay, but he always dismissed her with a sigh. I'm fine. You're overthinking, he'd say, and then walk away before she could respond. The more independent and confident he became, the more he treated her like she didn't matter. Emily felt the distance growing, but she held on to hope because she didn't want to believe her sacrifices had meant nothing. She didn't want to believe she had supported someone who was now pulling away from her on purpose. She had no idea that while she was trying to hold the relationship together, Ryan was quietly preparing to let it go. She kept convincing herself it was just a phase. She didn't know she was giving grace to a man who had already decided she wasn't part of his future. Emily walked into the dinner thinking maybe this was the moment everything would shift back to normal. Ryan's family had planned a big celebration at a nice restaurant, and she hoped he would finally show a little appreciation for everything she had carried. She didn't expect a speech or anything dramatic, just a simple acknowledgement, something that showed he remembered she stood by him. She wanted to believe he was still the man she supported, not the cold version he had become. Everyone was cheerful, talking about his new job and how proud they were of him. Emily sat beside him quietly, listening and smiling politely. She waited for him to mention her name even once. Ryan talked about his hard work, his determination, and how he never relied on anyone. Emily felt her chest tighten, but she kept her expression calm. She told herself he might still say something, that maybe he was just nervous or overwhelmed. But then one of his uncles joked, "You must have had some help getting through all that schooling." This was the moment Emily thought Ryan would finally give her some credit. Instead, he laughed louder than anyone and said, "Help? Please. I did everything myself. Emily just helped with groceries sometimes." The table burst into laughter. Even Ryan's mother chuckled. Emily felt every sound hit her like a punch. Her throat tightened, and her hands began to shake under the table. She stared at Ryan, hoping he would correct himself, hoping he would at least glance at her with some kind of apology. But he didn't look her way at all. He kept laughing with everyone else, completely comfortable with erasing everything she had done for him. She tried to swallow the hurt, but it was too big. She felt trapped between wanting to disappear and wanting to cry. Her ears rang, and the room felt smaller each second. She didn't want to cause a scene, so she just sat still, forcing herself to breathe while everyone continued eating like nothing happened. When the dinner finally ended and they stepped outside, Emily quietly asked him why he said what he did. She wasn't angry. She was heartbroken and confused. She expected he might apologize or at least explain himself. Instead, Ryan rolled his eyes and said, "You're being dramatic. It was just a joke. Don't make everything about you." His words cut deeper than the laughter at the table. Emily realized, in that moment, that he wasn't just forgetting her sacrifices. He was actively choosing to erase them. He didn't care how much it hurt her. He didn't care how much she had given up. He didn't even see her as someone worth defending in front of his own family. Emily went home that night feeling small and foolish, wondering how she could have loved someone who treated her like she didn't matter. She didn't know it yet, but this moment was the beginning of everything that would come next. Emily tried to move past the dinner incident, even though it stayed in her mind like a bruise she couldn't ignore. She kept thinking maybe Ryan had just been embarrassed or caught up in the moment. She hoped he would come to her later, apologize, and show even a little bit of the man he used to be. But he didn't. Instead, he kept acting like nothing was wrong, and she kept trying to convince herself she was overthinking. A few days later, she came home earlier than planned because her shift ended unexpectedly. She walked in quietly, thinking Ryan wasn't home yet, but she heard his voice coming from the living room. He was on the phone, talking to one of his friends. Emily didn't mean to listen, but the tone of his voice made her stop in her tracks. He sounded annoyed, almost angry, talking about her. "Man, I'm done with her," he said, as if he had been holding it in for a while. "She's not the type of woman I see myself with long-term." Emily froze. She didn't move, barely breathed. She waited, hoping she misheard him, hoping he meant something else. But he kept talking, completely unaware she was standing just a few feet away. "Yeah, she paid for school, but that was her choice. I never asked her to go that far," he said, laughing under his breath. "She acts like I owe her something. I don't. She made her decisions." Every word felt like a knife. Emily felt her stomach twist, but she couldn't pull herself away. She kept listening because some part of her needed to hear the truth, even if it crushed her. Then he added the words that hit her harder than anything else. "She won't leave anyway. She's too soft for that. She needs me more than I need her." Emily felt her heart drop. This was the real Ryan. Not the man she thought she loved. Not the man she sacrificed for. This was someone who felt no guilt, no gratitude, no respect for her at all. He didn't just take advantage of her. He believed she was too weak to ever walk away. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let a sound escape. She stepped back quietly, careful not to make the floor creak. She didn't want him to know she heard him. She needed a moment to breathe, to gather herself, to stop her hands from shaking. For the first time, Emily saw everything clearly. He had already moved on emotionally. He had taken everything she gave, used it to climb into a better life, and now he was preparing to cut her out of it completely. She wasn't part of his future, not because she failed him, but because he never intended to keep her once he no longer needed her. Her heartbreak didn't disappear, it changed. It hardened. The tears that fell were quiet, but something inside her shifted. She no longer felt confused or unsure. She no longer wondered if she was imagining things or being too sensitive. She finally understood that the man she loved was gone, and the man standing in his place only cared about himself. And for the first time, Emily felt the beginning of something she hadn't felt in months: clarity. She knew she couldn't stay. She knew she wouldn't be the soft woman he believed she was. She knew he had used her. And now, she knew exactly what she needed to do next. Emily didn't confront Ryan the night she heard him on the phone. She didn't cry in front of him, didn't shout, didn't ask why he felt that way. She realized there was nothing he could say that would change what she already knew. He had used her, and he was preparing to walk away without looking back. So instead of reacting, she went quiet. She moved around the apartment carefully, speaking only when necessary, staying calm even when her heart felt heavy. Ryan didn't notice the change. He was too focused on himself to see that Emily had finally stopped trying. While he assumed she was still clinging to him, Emily started working in silence. She opened her laptop late at night when he was asleep and began gathering everything she had spent on him over the years. She collected receipts for tuition payments, bank transfers, rent payments she covered, bills she paid, and even old messages where he thanked her and promised he would pay her back once he graduated. Every piece of proof went into a neatly organized folder. The more she collected, the more she realized just how much she had carried alone. She searched through emails she hadn't looked at in years, finding financial records she had forgotten existed. She printed copies of the tuition bills she paid and even gathered the statements showing when she paid for his car repairs. She didn't let emotion distract her. She worked with the same determination she once used to support him, but now she was protecting herself. Emily knew she needed more than evidence, she needed direction. So one afternoon, when she knew Ryan wouldn't be home, she visited a small law office across town. She felt nervous walking in, but the moment she explained her situation, the attorney listened carefully. She told him how she paid for Ryan's education, how he promised to repay her, how she had proof of his agreement in messages, and how he now claimed he owed her nothing. The lawyer nodded as she spoke, and when she was done, he told her something she wasn't expecting. She had a strong legal case. He explained that even without a written contract, the combination of her financial support, his verbal promises, and the text messages showing his intentions created what the law recognized as a verbal agreement. He also mentioned something called detrimental reliance, meaning she made sacrifices based on his promises, and he benefited from them. That alone was enough to take action. Hearing that gave Emily a feeling she hadn't felt in a long time: power. Quiet, steady power. Something inside her settled. She wasn't crazy for feeling wronged. She wasn't imagining the betrayal. Her sacrifices had value, and now there was a way to hold him accountable. The lawyer prepared documents for her, outlining the amount Ryan owed and the evidence supporting her claim. Emily left the office with a folder in her hands and a calmness she couldn't explain. She didn't feel angry. She didn't feel scared. She felt focused. While Ryan walked around the apartment acting like he controlled everything, Emily continued her plan without a word. She acted normally, cooked dinner, and responded politely when he spoke, all while carrying the quiet knowledge of what was coming. She didn't need to yell or fight. She didn't need him to understand the pain he caused. She simply needed him to face consequences he never thought she would deliver. And step by step, she prepared for the moment he would finally see the woman he underestimated. Emily waited for the right moment, not rushed or emotional, just steady and prepared. She chose a quiet evening when Ryan was home, relaxed on the couch, scrolling through his phone without a care in the world. He didn't even look up when she walked into the room. For a second, she watched him. This man she once loved so deeply, the man she carried on her shoulders for years. Then she reminded herself of the truth she had uncovered. He never valued her, and he never planned to. She sat down across from him and placed a thick packet of papers on the coffee table. Ryan glanced at it lazily, then at her, confused. Emily didn't raise her voice. She didn't show anger. She simply said, "You need to read this." Ryan smirked, leaning forward with a dismissive laugh. "What is this? Another emotional letter?" He flipped open the first page, expecting something dramatic or meaningless. But as his eyes moved across the words, legal notice, reimbursement claim, documented evidence, his smile froze. His posture changed. He sat up straight, flipping through the pages faster, panic slowly showing in his eyes. What is this supposed to mean?" he asked, but his voice wasn't confident anymore. It was tight, uneasy. "It means," Emily said calmly, "that I'm done letting you take advantage of me. And now you can face the consequences." Ryan laughed again, but this time it was shaky. "Emily, come on. You're not actually doing this. You wouldn't take me to court. That's crazy." He pushed the papers back toward her like he could make them disappear. But Emily didn't move them. Her calmness unsettled him more than anger ever could. He kept reading through the documents, moving faster now. He saw every tuition bill she paid, every bank transfer she sent, every message where he promised he would repay her once he graduated. He saw the exact total amount the lawyer calculated, far more than he wanted to face. His face lost color, and he pressed his lips together like he didn't know whether to yell or beg. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "You can't prove half of this. And even if you could, why would you do this to me?" Emily looked directly at him. "Because you told your friend you were done with me. Because you said I was soft and wouldn't leave. Because you pretended I didn't help you at all. You didn't just hurt me, Ryan. You used me. And now you have to take responsibility." Ryan tried everything: anger, guilt, manipulation. He stood up, pacing, saying she was overreacting. Then he softened his tone, saying he didn't mean what he said on the phone. Then he tried to guilt her, saying this would ruin him. When none of that worked, he even tried pleading, saying they could work things out and figure something out together. Emily didn't react to any of it. Her voice stayed steady. "You made your choices. Now I'm making mine." He stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time, not as the quiet, supportive woman he depended on, but as someone who had finally stepped out from under his shadow. "You can sign the agreement," she said, "or we can let the court decide. Either way, you're paying me back." For once, Ryan had nothing to say. And for the first time, Emily felt truly in control. When Emily finally took the case to court, Ryan acted like nothing serious could ever happen to him. He kept telling people she was overreacting and that he didn't owe her anything. He even tried to joke about it in front of friends, as if the whole situation was beneath him. But inside the courtroom, that confidence disappeared. The judge listened carefully to every piece of evidence Emily provided. The bank transfers, the messages, the promises he had made when he needed her support. Ryan tried to argue that the money wasn't a loan and that she had given it willingly out of love, but his words didn't match the proof. The judge didn't need long to decide. Emily won the case. The court ordered Ryan to pay back the full $30,000, and because he delayed for so long, he had to pay interest too. Ryan's face went pale when the judge announced the amount. Still, even after the ruling, he tried to avoid paying by pretending he didn't have the money. He thought he could hide his income or convince the court that he was struggling financially. But when the court demanded his salary records, he panicked. He tried to involve his employer, hoping they could help him keep his documents private. Instead, the opposite happened. His employer learned the truth, that Ryan had used someone, taken her money, broken promises, and now was trying to dodge responsibility. People at his workplace began whispering behind his back. Some stopped trusting him entirely. His manager called him in for a meeting and warned him that this kind of behavior damaged the company's reputation. Ryan walked out of that meeting feeling smaller than he had ever felt in his life. Even worse for him, the news reached his mother. Emily had always been kind to her, especially during the time when Ryan himself didn't care much about helping his family. His mother remembered how Emily had supported her, how she had visited, checked on her, and even helped with groceries when Ryan made excuses. When she learned what Ryan had done, how he took Emily's money, betrayed her, and now refused to pay her back, she felt deep disappointment. She called him and asked him directly if it was true. Ryan couldn't lie this time. His mother's voice broke when she told him she had never expected her own son to act so selfishly. That conversation affected him more than the court ruling. He had lost respect where it mattered most. Meanwhile, Emily didn't gloat or celebrate. Winning the case wasn't about revenge, it was about fairness. She had supported him when he needed her most, and now she simply wanted closure. She walked out of the courthouse knowing she had done the right thing. And even though Ryan still avoided facing the reality of his actions, the consequences had already begun to follow him. In his career, in his family, and in the way people now looked at him. After the court case ended, Emily finally felt a weight lift off her shoulders. For years, she had carried stress, worry, and heartbreak along with financial burdens, and now all of it was behind her. With the money Ryan owed her, she paid off her remaining debts, something she hadn't been able to do for a long time. The relief of seeing her finances in order made her feel lighter than she had in years. She decided it was time for a fresh start, so she found a new apartment. It was small, but it was hers, and for the first time, it felt like a place where she could breathe freely and make her own decisions without anyone controlling her life. Emily began to focus on herself in ways she hadn't allowed before. She enrolled in classes she had always wanted to take, joined a local gym to feel strong in her body as well as her mind, and started reconnecting with old friends she had put aside during her long struggle. Every day, she reminded herself that her time mattered, her energy mattered, and her happiness mattered. Slowly, she built routines and habits that made her feel empowered instead of drained. She was learning to enjoy life on her own terms, not just as a supporter of someone else's dreams. Reflecting on the past, Emily realized how love had blinded her. She had believed that giving everything to someone else was the same as love. But now she understood that true love doesn't require erasing yourself. The betrayal she suffered had been painful, but it had also shown her how strong and capable she really was. The same woman who had sacrificed every spare hour and every dollar now understood that her worth wasn't defined by someone else's appreciation or lack of it. She had value on her own, and she could live fully without depending on anyone to validate her. With each day, Emily's confidence grew. She walked taller, spoke more clearly, and allowed herself to say no without guilt. She could finally make choices without fear of judgment or retaliation. For the first time, she felt proud of herself in a way that had nothing to do with anyone else. She recognized that being independent and self-sufficient was empowering. The heartbreak that once crushed her now felt like a teacher guiding her toward her own strength. Emily also started thinking about her future differently. Instead of planning everything around someone else, she set goals for her own life. She wanted stability, happiness, and freedom. She wanted to travel, learn new skills, and maybe even start her own business someday. She no longer measured her value by what she gave to others. She measured it by what she could achieve for herself. Every choice she made now was about building a life she could be proud of. The girl who had once given everything to someone else had learned a hard but essential lesson. Sometimes, choosing yourself is the bravest, most necessary thing you can do. Emily had survived betrayal, taken back control, and finally allowed herself to grow. She was no longer just someone's supporter or someone who hoped for love. She was whole, independent, and finally free to live her own story. Months passed, and Emily's life continued to improve. She had settled into her new apartment, her routines were solid, and she felt more confident than she ever had. She was no longer weighed down by the stress of debt, betrayal, or trying to hold a relationship together that was never meant to survive. Her days were her own, filled with work she enjoyed, hobbies she had neglected, and friends who truly supported her. She felt lighter, happier, and freer. The quiet sense of power she carried now wasn't loud or vengeful. It was steady and unshakable. Then, one afternoon, she received a message from Ryan. He sounded almost apologetic, saying he missed what they had, and hinting that maybe he had made a mistake. He wanted to talk, to reconnect, to see if they could somehow salvage something. Emily read the words carefully, her heart steady and calm. For a brief moment, she remembered the old feelings, but she quickly reminded herself why she had moved forward. Ryan had chosen his path long ago, and she had already claimed hers. Instead of replying angrily, she responded politely but firmly. She told him she had moved on, that she was focused on her own growth, and that she had no interest in revisiting the past. She didn't need to explain or justify herself. She simply closed the door with grace. Ryan's attempts to guilt her or pull her back had no effect. He had underestimated her, and now he had no power over her life. From a distance, Ryan watched. He saw Emily thriving in ways he never imagined. She had confidence, independence, and a sense of self-respect that he could no longer touch. He realized that while he had tried to control her and take advantage of her, she had turned it all into strength. Every achievement, every moment of happiness, and every step forward in her life was a reminder to him that she no longer needed him, and never would again. Emily, meanwhile, didn't focus on him. She didn't gloat or seek revenge actively. Her revenge was in living her life fully, without letting anger or heartbreak hold her back. She understood that the best way to respond to betrayal was not through destruction, but through her own growth. She had paid her debts, reclaimed her independence, and rebuilt her confidence. Every day she woke up, she felt proud of herself, proud that she had survived and thrived despite the pain. Looking back, Emily reflected on everything that had happened. She thought about the sacrifices she made, the heartbreak she endured, and the strength she discovered. She realized that sometimes the most powerful response isn't confrontation, punishment, or words. It's showing the person who hurt you that their actions cannot stop your growth. Healing and thriving are, in themselves, a kind of revenge. In her quiet moments, she smiled, knowing she had done exactly that. She had given Ryan a front-row seat to her healing, her success, and her happiness. And in that, Emily found satisfaction stronger than any anger could ever give her. Sometimes she thought, the best revenge is simply living your best life. And that is exactly what she had done.